Leagueies, welcome to the round 17 preview edition of Footy Rants. I'm Benny Matthews and we are talking everything NRL. Well, what a weekend. So we're Origin inhibited free this weekend. We're back to the Thursday to Sunday schedule, and tonight we have Parramatta coming up against the Canterbury Bulldogs. Look, Para's been playing a lot better in recent times, and the doggies, they're just having that ever prominent problem of consistency. So some weeks they're on, some weeks they're off, but regardless, whether they are on, scoring points is just their biggest downfall. I hate to keep saying it if you are a Dogs fan and you're listening to this, but to sort of delve into the contest between these two clubs, we know that it's always a pretty physical affair, and there's always plenty of feeling in it. If we think back to the good old battle between Nathan Hindmarsh and Michael Ennis a number of years ago now, where whatever was said by Ennis wasn't thought too fondly of from Hindmarsh, and he gave him a couple of 1-2s on the chin. So both teams carrying the history that they do. Being around for I think their inception was pretty. Oh, actually, no. Canterbury is a few years older than Parramatta, so scrap that idea. But yeah, regardless, the battles that they shared during the 80s as well are well renowned. But I guess you can only look upon that with only fond memories. I think now Parramatta is starting to get this backline close to what it should be looking like. I really love the move of Gutherson to fullback and French back to the wing. I think French is utilised still quite effectively for his speed on that wing, and Gutherson's creativity and pure involvement in the success of Parramatta this year is undeniable. So he needs to have his hands on the football, and to shift him onto the wing or even into the centres, I think was denying him that ability. So having him at one is a massive plus. The Eels have won the last two against Canterbury, but prior to that, the Dogs had actually won 9 of the last 10. So there's a bit of weight held each way. If you sort of zoom out, you'd probably say that the Dogs have the rub of the green, but more recently it's been leaning towards Parramatta. Consistency again, I think, is going to be the word that is rung around the dressing sheds for both of these sides, both on sort of that bottom end of the 8, just outside the 8. This is a crucial win to start leapfrogging your way by generating some momentum to get into that top 8. That we're into, I think there's only 9 rounds left now before the end of the season. So if you're going to start making your run, it really needs to start happening now. If we run through the lineup, so as I was saying, that back line for Parramatta remains the same as last week. So you've got Gutherson, Radradra, Jennings, Takarangi, French, Norman and Moses. So I think now that having Jennings back defensively for Parramatta brings a lot more safety to Mitchell Moses in some of his defensive lapses that I've made very evident on this podcast. A big loss for them, though, is Kaiser Pritchard. So we see Cameron King is named to start, so that'll be his first appearance for Parramatta, and Will Smith is still named on the bench, so expect him to play a little bit of 9, because you wouldn't expect that King will be up to playing 80 minutes in the NRL first hit out. Moreau has also been moved back to the bench, and Kenny Edwards will start. If we sort of scroll down to the Bulldogs lineup, they welcome back Origin star Brett Morris. Frawley's been named on the bench, so hopefully that'll add that spark again with the combination shared between Reynolds and Mbai to help with those kicking duties. I think it's a massive challenge now for Michael Leisha to stand up, especially with the inexperience of Cameron King. He's been around a few clubs now and probably really missed out. If memory serves me correctly, he started with the Dragons, and if I am thinking of the right moment, I believe he tore his pec in way back in in a World Club Challenge in England. I think him and Gasnier might have done it in the same game, and that really got him behind the eight ball because he was sort of penned to kick on at the Dragons. And who was their former nine? I think it was Young. He was meant to be the next nine coming through for the Dragons, but yeah, sort of missed the boat and spent some time up with the Cowboys, and now finds himself at Parramatta. But yeah, Leisha really needs to stand up, and even though he is only young, he's starting to get that experience now. You know, he's been around for a number of years since moving from the Sharks and working underneath Michael Ennis. Yeah, it's absolutely go time. Areas where I think that the Bulldogs can have success is on their edges. You know what I mean? Like Josh Jackson, Adam Elliott, they're very much well established in their edges for their respective club, but it's up to these halves in Reynolds and Mbai to create those opportunities for them. So as long as they're there to receive those passes and make the most of those opportunities, you know, they've got these stunning outside backs in Morris. You know, you got Hopewadi. Montoya's probably been better defensively, to be honest, and Chase Stanley's still finding his feet coming back into the NRL after, you know, such a injury-riddled career. I really hope he can get a bit of consistency under his belt and notch up some much-deserved games in that NRL career. The thing that sort of tips me in this encounter is just the creativity that Parramatta can possess just in that back line. Obviously, the finishing capabilities. You know, you got the size of Radradra and the speed of Bevan French. Mix that in with the experience of Jennings, the off-the-cuff nature of Gutherson, and you know the slowly developing halves partnership of Norman and Moses. I think there's just a little recipe there of creativity that the Dogs perhaps don't quite have this year. But that's not to say that they can't defend their way to a victory. They won't be the first time they've done it, and won't be the last. So if it's going to be that sort of game, and that's the sort of game that the Dogs want to make it, you know, they're very much in the realms of possibility of snatching a win. I think it's going to be 1-12 either way, but I'm leaning towards Parramatta. So that's where my money's leaning towards in the first game of round 17 tonight. Tomorrow, so we've got the Titans up against the Dragons. We see at the top here, so there's a few little changes. We see McQueen comes back in, and so does Roberts. He was named last week, but was a late admission once more, with Fogarty debuting. Now, both teams sort of come off a win last week, but unconvincing. You know, the Titans beat the Tigers, who are in last place, and the Dragons managed to come home with a massive second half wave of momentum to beat Newcastle, the second last place side. So, you know, whilst they did both win, they're against far less opposition. And you look at the team on paper, we say it week in, week out, that the Titans do possess, even though that they are scraping to certain degrees into the depths of their playing roster. You know, like Hayne, Anthony Don, Copley, Hurrell, Zillman, Roberts, Taylor, you know, and then you got the forward pack in form of Wallace, James, Peets, you know, Proctor super experience, and so is Chris McQueen. You know, the most inexperienced guy out there is probably Joe Greenwood, and he's probably been one of their best this year in the back row. So Politoni will get another crack after a strong debut after coming out of that Burleigh Bears system. So he gets his second opportunity for the year. It'll be interesting to see where they look to use him. You know, whether they do bring Peets off and whether they're looking to sort of nurse him around this origin period. I know Peets was sort of hurting quite extensively after backing up from origin and the like. So yeah, I dare say it's just a load monitoring pattern of thinking for Neil Henry. But I really like the changes that St. George have made. Unfortunately, Paul Vaughan, you know, we said last week he's out with that calf injury that he sustained in the first couple of minutes of the game against Newcastle. But just the influence of Josh Dugan that he had in that second half, and now we can really start to bolster up that right edge with Ewan Aitken finally returning. I very much love watching this young dude play. Just the brute strength and power. You know, you look at the size of his legs and his ass, and it's just just got performance written all over it. He's so strong. Any time that you give that kid the ball within that 15-meter radius of the try line, you know you're really going to have to get your body in front, because even that first up contact's got to be strong, because he's going to be able to carry you a few meters post contact. So for me, I'd as a Dragons supporter, I'd really be looking at getting on this bloke to score a try anytime. I think he's paying $4.50 anytime try scorer and a Dragons win. So I'm leaning towards a Dragons victory here. They've won 5 from 8 on the Gold Coast, and however, 10 of the last 17 have been by a margin of 6 points or less. So just based off the form that both teams carry, the Dragons are nowhere near the side that they were during that first 6 to 8 rounds. And I think that was evident, sort of coming into Origin period. Dugan sustained a couple of those injuries. Kurt Mann was left to play Mr. Fix-It, and he's still maintaining that role. Macrone's been named on the bench, and Kurt Mann at 7. So I think it's just deserved for the effort that he's put in since moving from the Melbourne Storm. He experienced pretty much stability whilst that club playing in the centres, but he's played just about every position at the Dragons now. It's been really good to watch. Just the way that he manages to find his way into the game, no matter what position he's playing. He's really, really exciting. So, look for Leeson Armour to really stand up. I don't think they'll lose too much with him having to start. Maybe just a little bit of gas in the tank. Obviously, the energy of the game's a little bit more frivolous from the get-go as it is coming off the bench. But, bolstering that pack with Jack de Belin returning isn't going to hurt either. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Macrone, whether they look to double him up in partnership with McInnes, or just sort of throw him out there as a roving pivot. But I'm not sure if they'll do that, just because of the ability that Dugan does bring to the side. But yeah, we see there in the reserves, Tane Milne's been excluded in the starting 17. And Will Matthews has been named in there, which is good to see, because he sustained that horrible hip injury. I think it was at the Auckland Nines. So, I don't think he was even tipped to really be back this year. So to be back within just over halfway through the season's a great effort, and I'm very much happy for him. He's been a bit of a journeyman, and he's sort of really had to work hard for any sort of NRL appearances that he has had. But a big impact for me that I think is really could tip the scales either way is this bloke here, Tarek Sims. I think he deceptively helped shift the momentum. I mentioned Dugan at the top being a big influencer for the Dragons, but Tarek Sims, he just bashed the fuck out of Brock Lamb last week, but quite legally. Not like a Burgess dog shot on Milford. I mean, pushing hard off the line and getting genuine contact on there, but not in a grubby way. This is my job. You're a smaller bloke, so I'm going to try and take advantage of that. But hey, I'm going to pull you up after. I just want to let you know that I'm here and I'm in your ear all day. So I really like what he brings off the bench, and you look at that forward pack still: Packer, Armour, Frizzell, Thompson, de Belin. Joel Thompson's really found a second wind, and I think that probably has a lot to do with his headspace at the moment, and being part of that state of mind program that's being run by the NRL as far as mental health and awareness is concerned, as being a driving force from the NRL. It's very much a product of balance, being very aware of who you are as a person outside of football, and what you can contribute as a person. Goes a long way to you letting go of some of the pressures that you put yourself under when you're in the sort of fixed pockets of your identity. And obviously, being a professional sportsman, that is basically the biggest proponent of your identity. And if you're sort of doubting who you are on the field, obviously being one of the older statesmen at the club, it was evident in his performances last year and his form last year. But now he's really bounced back, and we see there, he's scored 6 tries in 15 games, which is a fair strike rate for a back rower, and see no one around him in that forward pack is even close to the influence that he's been having as far as tries scored for the Dragons. So Yeah, I think we're in for a good game. There's plenty of good games on this weekend. Um, again, even though I'm leaning towards the Dragons, it's not to say that the Titans are out of it. We've seen how influential Hayne was in their second half push to victory. His partnership with Conrad Hurrell was really entertaining to watch, and it'll be interesting to see if Tyrone Roberts can add some value when he comes on at 6. But yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty close game. I'm keen to see these forwards go head to head. It's a bit of a shame that Paul Vaughan won't be there, to be honest. But yeah, leaning towards the Dragons in a 1-12. Second game on Friday night, we've got an absolute blockbuster. Bronx versus Storm. I think it's been touted as the mates versus mates clash. Plenty of Queensland Origin stars in both lineups. But there's some pretty damaging stats for Brisbane in the form of Storm, and one that I found really shocking. Would you believe that Melbourne Storm are the only club in the NRL to have a winning record against the Brisbane Broncos? That's it's a testament to the franchise that is the Brisbane Broncos. Love them or hate them, I'm leaning towards the hating side. Um, they are a phenomenal professional outfit who know how to get a job done. Um, but yeah, the Storm are 11 from the last 13. I did read that they've won their last 6 at Suncorp, but I think that must be against Brisbane, because I'm fairly sure they lost to the Gold Coast and that was at Suncorp. I'm pretty sure that was a part of that doubleheader. But regardless, I think they've won their last 6 at Suncorp against Brisbane. And you have to go back to 2009 was the last time that the Bronx won at Suncorp, would you believe? So pretty crazy, almost a decade. The biggest, I guess, difference for me in as far as what attacking power, winning power that the Broncos possess is Jordan Kahu at 1. There's no denying the influence that Darius Boyd has in the shape of their attack, and I just don't think Kahu brings quite the same finesse. He just doesn't. It's hard to pinpoint the exact attributes, I guess, that he doesn't bring, but I don't know if it's just an experience thing. But yeah, if I'm looking across the park and I've got Slater on my side and I know the space that he's created, for people like Felice Kafusi and Will Chambers on that right edge, I just don't assimilate Jordan Kahu doing the same thing. They've still got plenty of strike. We know how prolific Corey Oates is as a try scorer. James Roberts has that electric speed, and if we can see a foot race between him and Adokara, I think it'll be great for the game. Tautai Moga, he's been there every week, so we can see there. It looks like only him, Adam Blair, and Alex Glenn are the only 3 Broncos to have played every game thus far this year. So it's a testament to Moga. He's been chipping away. He's probably been a little bit up and down, but yeah, the most shocking selection for me is leaving Nikorima in that starting side. I know this isn't necessarily the team that will run out. Ben Hunt could very well start. And my reasoning behind starting Ben Hunt is simply just the defensive capabilities of Cody Nikorima. I don't think they're as high quality as Ben Hunt. And we've already seen early on how well the Melbourne Storm execute on a game plan early on in the game. When they played against the Cronulla Sharks a number of weeks ago, they isolated Jaden Brayley whilst they had all the energy and the go forward of possession and scored 2 tries in the first 10 minutes. Whilst that game did eventually tighten up, the Melbourne Storm just show how good they execute. Not to mention they just took it to the second place Sydney Roosters, who were only missing Boyd Cordner and Takaaho, with none or one of their 5 Origin players. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's danger signs for me as a Broncos player. I'm bringing the same side that won a scrappy affair against Canberra Raiders, and now I'm coming up against a team who's only just lost to the second place side, and they didn't have any of their spine. So, yeah, for me, that's warning signs. And I've been reading that a lot of the money's gone 1 to 12 either way. We've seen that it was only a Cameron Smith conversion from the sideline that got the Storm home on the bell in round 3 this year. But yeah, I really like the Storm to go and do a job and really ambush the Bronx coming into this third Origin period. When you've got all staff on deck, you want to be putting your best foot forward and generating those plays and performances that you want to elicit coming into week 1, week 2 of the finals. Benji Marshall looks like he's a mainstay for Brisbane, but yeah, scrolling down and having a look at this Storm team, it's still a great team. Slater, Vunivalu, Chambers. I still don't think Tonamapea should be there, but I guess it's the lesser of two evils, himself and Curtis Curtis Scott, apologies. Probably you can't blame any player for losing a game, but a few of the defensive reads, I think there was 9 missed tackles between the two of them, and when that's the toughest defensive position to play at centre in the game, and you're giving opposition 9 opportunities to further their advances down the field, it's not something that Craig Bellamy's going to allow to happen. So we'll see Munster return to the 6 jersey. Obviously Hughes and Croft will go back to their respective Queensland Cup sides. Slade Griffin's held his spot on the bench, and I dare say that's again just comes back to probably a load management thing, much like the Gold Coast Titans with Pete's. But yeah, Stimson, he had a screamer for the Sunny Coast against Winner Manly last week in the Queensland Cup, where Sunny Coast won 30 points to 12. So yeah, I just really like this edge in Harrison Kafusi, and just knowing that Bromwich is coming off the bench now and supporting big brother and Jesse. Jesse's really starting to hit his groove again after his fuck up post Anzac Day test. So yeah, for me, all the signs are there. A good work rate battle between Finucane and Maguire will come into play, and Vunivalu, Oates. There's matchups all over the shop. So yeah, I'm really excited for this one. But unless the execution from the Broncos is at an absolute premium, and if Cody Nikorima is to start, that his defensive efforts are on point right from the get-go, I really think there could be an ambush from the Storm here in a 13-plus victory. So yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm definitely tipping the Melbourne Storm, but to further that, I'm going to say Storm 13-plus. Another cracker of a game that we've got lined up, the Roosters and the Sharks. Really important game coming up, and I think the Roosters will have taken a lot of confidence in coming back against the Melbourne Storm last week, even though we just said it was a severely depleted Melbourne Storm. 2 competition points is vital, and had they not achieved that victory last week, the Storm would have a 3-win advantage on top of the ladder. So I think just psychologically, you look at it from one perspective that, yes, we beat a team of kids, but hey, it was a super important win, and now we just need to build off the back of that, because every 2 competition points is 2 competition points that we either stay or get closer to the Melbourne Storm in that run for the minor premiership. This game has actually been played on the Central Coast, and both sides have fairly ordinary winning records there. So the Sharkies are 1 from their last 3, and the Roosters are 0-6. So it's going to be interesting to see which way this sort of pans out. But the same side will run out for the Roosters. So still no Boyd Cordner. He's still racing the clock to even get back for Origin 3. So we'll still see that Madison will be there to, I guess, attempt to protect Luke Keary on that edge. And we've seen the Storm exploit that defensive combination. But I really like the fact that Connor Watson is still remaining in this 17 for Trent Robertson, and I think he brings a lot of value, even though it's now being rumoured that he's going to make the move to the West Tigers. I really love what he does bring to the club. But the biggest losses for Cronulla we see here, Jaden Brayley it had been confirmed that he did break his jaw, so he's out for a number of weeks. And replacement dummy half, Daniel Mortimer, actually just linked up with the Leeds Centurions in the Super League, so he's in the UK as of now. So Brown comes in on the bench Brown comes in at 9, and Paulo will come off the bench. So we've seen him play a little bit of 9 for the Sharks in years gone by. So you'd suspect that Paulo will get some time in at 9. I've got no idea as far as Brown's experience at 9. I haven't really seen a whole lot of him outside of his couple of performances during this Origin period for Cronulla. So that is going to be a big point of exploitation for the Roosters, and they'll definitely target him a lot in the middle. So again, Waria Hargraves and Napa are really going to have to stand up again and just make sure that this young fella's along for the ride and holding the standard that the Sharks do hold, because they haven't had back-to-back losses all this year. So even though it's not quite the Cronulla Sharks that we experienced last year with the likes of Ennis and Barber being present, they're still able to get wins on the board. They were thoroughly disappointing against Manly last week, but I think a lot of people sort of smelled that little bit of an Origin hangover for Cronulla was on the cards, especially with the lack of Origin presence in the Manly lineup. So yeah, look, I think this is going to be a close one, and it's going to be dictated around either the execution of that left attacking edge of the Roosters in Keary, Mitchell and Tupou. If they can really fire, they're going to go a long way. But it goes straight back the other way. If they can get Jack Bird playing with a bit of an attacking license and get some joy around that defensive combination of Keary and Madison, much like the inexperienced Storm team did, and now we're talking about the experience of a Cronulla side, there's going to be dividends that can be paid. So I think it's just going to be who can hang in there longer. And do you look at it in one aspect? It's like, well, the Roosters, came back and fought hard for their victory last week, or do you look at it from the point of view that, oh, hey, it's a performance that we don't see very often from Cronulla last week, so you can't really see it happening again? Or are we now going to see a bit of a form slump from Cronulla? So it's a flip of a coin, this game. It's really hard to pick. I've had a bit of a look. The Sharks, they're known for their second halves, which means they're happy to stick games out and play a full 80. Last week was probably the first time that they didn't do that. But even still, up until probably that last 15 minutes, you were just like, when Wade Graham scored that try, like, oh, is there going to be something here? Are they going to make a late charge? That they ended up squashing that, and Dylan Walker sealed the match for Manly. But it could go either way. The thing that worries me most is just in and around that ruck with no Brayley and now no Mortimer, and still no Seguiaro just as yet. So yeah, I think if the middle doesn't stand up for Cronulla and Connor Watson can really exploit them, the Roosters definitely have the map to get that win. But in saying that, there are holes in that defensive side for the Roosters as well, and I think the talent that is Jack Bird and even on the opposite edge in Wade Graham definitely have the ability to get the Sharks over the line. So I'm going to lean towards a Sharks victory 1-12 in an upset. Alrighty, Manly versus the Warriors. This game's being played in Perth on Saturday Arvo, so 3:30 Perth time, so 5:30 Aussie time, 7:30 New Zealand time. And that's a big factor that you can't dismiss for the Warriors. They're none from 8 in Perth. Manly are 3 from 5, and they've only lost to the Warriors 4 times since 2004. So in the last 13 years, only 4 losses. So they've got a pretty substantial winning record against the Warriors. So that'll be a little tick in their box. After sort of going with the big man lineup Last week, the Manly sides sort of switched back to having that utility off the bench. It won't be Hastings this week. We can see at the top there, Cameron Cullen's been named on the bench. Hastings is in the extended, so a possibility that either of those guys might get shuffled around. But a bigger mission, and the scoring hero in Curtis Sironen has torn his pec, so he's out, and we'll see former New Zealand Warrior Lewis Brown get his opportunity to start in that right second row position. So a little bit of a reshuffle, and Sironen, he's been probably one of the better forwards for Manly this year, as we were speaking about last week. Winterstein, Sironen have really sort of found second wins at the club, and now that there's opportunities for Lawrence and Evans to potentially sneak into a Queensland side, as well as Travojevic, they can't be written off either. There's a lot to play for just outside of club footy for a lot of these guys, and I think it's a interesting time for them to find that balance between coming together as a team, but then also having some sort of individual reward at stake, especially because that desire isn't really afforded to the Warriors team, having so many actual Kiwis playing for them. And they're probably the team that's sort of just slid under the radar at the moment. I think last week's win over the Sharks really would have made a lot of people sit up and take notice. And the inconsistency that we've seen from the Warriors, if we sort of scroll down here, is something of concern. We say it week in, week out, that New Zealand spine goes such a long way on paper, but fails to yield results when it actually comes to game day. Isaac Luke is going to be a massive loss for those guys, as is Sam Lasone off the bench. I thought him and Albert Vete have been really, really good. Foran has been named to start, but again, he was last week and was absent. So Uta Hingano, apologies, has been relegated back to the bench, but he'll be around again, and James Garvey comes in. So yeah, we still see, there's still some talent. Manu Vatuvei is still on the outside of this 17, probably riding into the sunset of his career a little bit now that we see that it appears that Charles Nickel-Klokstad is definitely the newcomer, and he's been rewarded with a contract extension as well, off the back of his efforts post Pacific Island Test match for the Cook Islands, and a really strong first 5 appearances. So we see 4 tries in his first 5 games, so not bad for a young fella at all. That whilst there is still plenty of attacking prowess, it's just that ability to execute, and they've only won 1 game in Australia this year which was only a couple of weeks ago against the Titans, but throw in that extra curveball that now they've pretty much got to travel double the distance to what they're used to. It's a big task for this club, and if they can go over there and roll Manly, it'll be a massive coup, and they could really generate some momentum. That'll be 3 on the trot for them. But no, for me, I think if Manly just stick to their guns, can work really hard on their right edge attack. So if they can look to get Dylan Walker some space outside Bodine Thompson, I think it's a massive area of weakness in the Warriors' defense. So for me, I'm going to look to Manly to win by margin. I'm not too sure. If the Warriors on paper show up, it could be very close, and that they may even snag a victory. If the Warriors that have been showing up in 2017 and show up, Manly could well prevail with another 13 plus victory. Excuse me, guys. Frog in my throat today. Alrighty. The Raiders and the Cowboys, so the final game of Super Saturday. I'm really excited about this one, mainly as a Cowboys supporter, with Tamare Martin set to make his Cowboys debut. So obviously they just wanted a little bit of more time to come together with Morgan, having not have been able to really train together because of Morgan's absence in the Origin camp before he came back for the game against Penrith on the weekend. And obviously, with all the rumours and hoo-ha around Martin's departure from Penrith and them actually playing Penrith, probably was a wise idea from Paul Green to leave him out of that lineup. If you haven't heard what those rumours are, I'll leave it to you to go and research them around why Martin did leave Penrith. The concerning thing for me is that, you know, the only sort of real changes for Canberra are Dave Taylor, who comes into the bench position. So again, just another massive body that the Canberra Raiders seem to produce in these forward packs year after year. But a stat that I sort of noticed was, you know, just the influence of these halves. So keeping in mind that Tamari Martin and Michael Morgan haven't played a single game together. So I know that this stat to a certain degree is going to be dictated around their performance together. But looking at someone like Austin and Caesar, they've played plenty of football together now. And in 30 appearances together, so you can see there, they both played every game this year. They've only managed 8 try assists. In 21 appearances between Morgan and Tamari Martin, they've managed 13 try assists. So 5 more try assists in 9 less games between them. And I know, you know, that could be well and truly thrown out the window because they haven't done that together. But Michael Morgan alone has had 10 for the Cowboys. So he's really starting to find his feet as that leader for the Cowboys in absence of Jonathan Thurston. So, yeah, I'm really, really excited as a Cowboys fan to see how Tamari Martin fits in. I think, you know, stature-wise and certainly the pressure that he's been able to withstand in his young NRL career, definitely poised as far as the initial steps that Jonathan Thurston took in his career. So it's going to be really, really cool to see what he's able to achieve, especially now that Thurston has been ruled out for the remainder of the season. I think Thurston's really going to take him under his wing and really try and instill some wisdom in the kid. So, yeah, thoroughly excited. And I know it's probably you know, we talk about any new combination that sort of has happened mid-season with Moses rocking up at Para, with Lola here rocking up at the Tigers, and it inevitably took time for them to get results. But for me, just off the sheer confidence that they've taken out of victories without Thurston this year, which wasn't necessarily apparent in years gone by, I think Martin can really slip in there and just make things pretty seamless. Whilst it, you know, was a little unfortunate that Labert sort of had to get pushed out. He's still on that reserves list, so who knows, that there may be something in there for him, but I dare say that won't change. The only change that I think may happen, a lot of the time, you know, you'll probably see coaches think, okay, we've got a massive forward pack in the Raiders, so let's meet fire with fire and pick 4 big boys on the bench. But I think what Green might do, if we have a look down here, Kalen Ponga's been named yet again in the reserves. Don't be surprised if he finds his way onto the bench. Just with the influence and minutes, you know Sean Fensom's going to be up for this game against his old club, so he'll rip in. Cohen Hess is playing out of his skin and has really found his role, tormenting everyone in the middle. Now that, you know, sort of Cooper and Lowe have reaffirmed their positions as those back rows for the Cowboys. But yeah, just sort of letting Cohen Hess roam from edge to edge now, I think has proved more pivotal. We've seen how much he tore up Parramatta early in the season and the meters that he ran for against Penrith last week. So yeah, don't be surprised if Ponga finds his way onto the bench, whether it would be at the expense of Hampton. You know, you're running a bit of a risk there if you have Hampton and Ponga on the bench. But yeah, don't be surprised if they try and think, okay, there's going to be some big bodies out there. If Taylor does play, I want to put Ponga on as soon as Taylor's out there and really get him working. Once he starts to fatigue, there could be some great joy for Granville and Ponga around that ruck. Yeah, there's plenty of finishing abilities in this Cowboys team. We've seen the amazing catch that Cole Felt took to, which eventually won the game after the conversion from Ethan Lowe. But yeah, it's more just the inconsistency. It's not the lack of ability. You know, Leilua and Rapana could potentially single-handedly win this game. the Cowboys don't have a great winning record in Canberra. I think they're 1 out of 5. So that's a tick in the box for the Raiders. They'll really want to continue that sort of fortress-esque mentality against the Cowboys down there. And it's obviously a stark contrast to conditions going from sunny, humid Townsville to the freezing depths of Canberra. So again, this one could probably teeter on a knife's edge. It wasn't that they were absolutely dreadful against the Broncos last week. I think they were probably just the more, I guess, the less best team. I thought both the Raiders and Broncos probably underperformed a little bit, but it was only through a few individual acts of brilliance from Ben Hunt and even Benji Marshall that probably steered them home with isolating that space for Matt Gillett on that right edge. So, if that forward pack does stand up and really bends this Cowboys line, they're a massive chance of laying that platform that Leilua and Rapana can grab the bull by the horns and really kick things on. But yeah, I don't know if it's just a case of me having my Cowboys bias supporter glasses on, but I can't see why the Cowboys can't go down there and upset the Raiders in a really close one. It'd be interesting to see which way it goes. As far as can we expect another high-scoring game as we've seen in the Raiders game last week, or are the screws well and truly going to be tightened and it's going to come down to a thriller again, much like we've seen with the Cowboys last week? So I think a lot of that will come down to what sort of style that Martin brings to the side and whether or not he wants to come out of his shell game one and really look to lay some dominance down. And I think that'll be very much what Green will want him to do. So yeah, I'm gonna tip the Cowboys in an upset 1-12. Alrighty, Battle of the Wooden Spoon, Knights and Tigers in our first game on the Sunday. Pretty well an unchanged Newcastle lineup aside from the inclusion, big inclusion of Jamie Buhrer. That's obviously a massive plus for them, just as far as experience goes. But yeah, I think the excitement that they were able to experience in that first half against the Dragons will fill them with confidence, especially coming up against the Tigers, who have the defensive lapses that they themselves have. So it's essentially who's going to be able to rub out the consistent inconsistencies that each team possesses throughout this 2017 season, and whoever's able to overcome those quicker and remain in focus longer is ultimately going to come up trumps. Whether one team absolutely fires and this blows out and it's a case of momentum was just building and it just needed to give way, or we see the traits of both teams come out and it's a scrappy affair and someone just manages to get that 10 minutes of good footy together where they capitalise on a win. With a near full strength Dragons outfit last week and the performance that they put on in the first half, it's undeniable that the Newcastle Knights will be feeling some sort of confidence out of the back of that. But it's ultimately whether or not that they can generate that over 60, 70, and ultimately fucking 80 minutes is what Nathan Brown will want to be achieving out of these. Nathan Ross was great at fullback last week, scored a hat-trick. I really like having Gagai in centre. So having Fitzgibbon and Gagai, it's a really powerhouse right-edge lineup. If Fitzgibbon can start to develop a passing game and an offload, Gagai will, I don't think Fitzgibbon's too dissimilar to a Crichton. I think they both play very similar styles. They're quite athletic. They're big, rangy boys. So yeah, I reckon Gagai, mate, that combination that they could develop at the Rabbitohs next year could be one of the best in the game. But yeah, for me, the inclusion of Tedesco is obviously a massive one for the West Tigers. And there's plenty of youth and damaging execution. Like, Tedesco, Norfoluma, Hassan Masters has burst onto the scene. Moses Suli's had a great debut season, and as is Kevin Aguama. Um, but just the defensive nature of these halves in Lolohea and Brooks, and the fact that it's so inconsistent. And I'm not sure if that's a case of it's just a skill and ability that these two lack, or if it's in conjunction with the fact that you've got two kids playing in, arguably the hardest defensive position on the field. But you can't deny that this forward pack will stand up and have a crack for you every week. It's not the most intimidating, outstanding forward pack in the competition as far as, Woods, Siamanafana'i, Sue, Lovett, Taylor. Like there is experience there, but there is also youth there. So it's an interesting balance, but knowing that a lot of it's not going to be there next year, I'm not sure what that does. Woods and Siamanafana'i both aren't going to be there. So Woods is going to Canterbury, Siamanafana'i is just signed with the Sharks. So that's going to be completely different next year. It's going to be Packer and Madalino next year. So it must be sort of hard knowing that as a halves combination that, I know you never want to question the integrity of certain players, but it's like, I know you definitely wouldn't do it with Woods. Like, he's always going to play to the death, but it's like, how interested are these guys going to be if they're not going to be here next year and we're already having a shit season? Whereas, at the Knights, they're just building towards something, whereas these guys are still flossing it out. So yeah, for me, I think as far as looking towards the future and who's in that lineup for the Knights, I think there's just a bit more stability there, and knowing how many people are leaving the Tigers, I think at a certain point it's going to affect how they perform later in the year. But it's not to say that Tedesco always tries his ass off, and if there's one player on that West Tigers lineup that could single-handedly win it, it's definitely him. But I like the combinations that they're starting to develop in Lamb and Feeney, and just the punch and width that they allowed Matautia and Fitzgibbon to play with last week, or at least in that second half. So if they can play that I think that they could probably beat the Tigers if they just put together a good 60 minutes, 65 minutes. So Knights have won 5 of the last 7. Bureau being a massive addition, I think he's just to be a calming effect out there. But look at Gagai and Fitzgibbon at any time try scorers. I think Gagai's 250, Fitzgibbon 450. There's massive value there. So I'm going to look at a Knights 1 to 12. I think it's going to be more so a case of a bit of a toing and froing, and whoever can just stick to that consistency a little bit more than the other side will get there. But I can't see it really blowing out. Into the final game of round 17, we have South up against Penrith. So South's coming off the back of a bye. We see that the spine, they're continuing with the halves pairing of Sutton and Reynolds, Walker out the back, and Robbie Farah still starts with Cook on the bench. Still got the kids in the back row, Fuimaono and Angus Crichton. No George Burgess in the starting side, so Dave Tyrrell has actually worked his way into the starting lineup. He hasn't seen much first grade this year. We see there only the one appearance, but already into that starting side. A good mix of experience and youth. I really like what Musgrove's provided for them off the bench, and Cole Turner's been dropped, as has Robbie Rockow. It'll be interesting to see if any of those changes are made and any of those reserves do get a start for the Rabbitohs. A disappointing loss for Penrith last week. You look at the stats and the Cowboys should have belted them. So I don't know what sort of light you look at that in from the perspective of Penrith. Do you say, well, look, it was good that we were even in the fight, but at the same time, should we have even lost it then? So, there's pluses and minuses all across the board, but it looks like it'll be the same team that did lose to the Cowboys last week that will take the field, and I very much agree with that. I don't think that they were terrible. I think it was probably just, I don't know, a bit of a case of we're going to go up here, there's no Thurston, and we're in a whole heap of form, and Tarmow would have been all fired up to get stuck into his old club, and yeah, it was just a game that I think after they toughed out that first 40 or 50 minutes, I think they thought they were just going to get that roll on and have that big finish that they're renowned for, at least over the last couple of months anyway. But for me, I wouldn't be too concerned as a Penrith supporter. I think they're going to get back to their winning ways. Again, I really like this spine. I love the fact that Moylan's now playing at 6. We're seeing another young talent get his opportunities, and Mitch Rain hasn't taken a backward step at 9. So, there's just so many young talented players in this side that I very much I love watching Penrith play. I really, really do. And I know I say it every week, and I'll probably say it every week until the end of the season. Yeah, I love watching Campbell Gillard just get in and get his work done. I think there's definitely rep honours for him in the future, and I think that Penrith's just got to see through this first probably 15-20 minutes in the forward pack, and they've very much got the forward pack to withstand that, as long as they can contain the offloading ability of these Burgess boys. I think they can really get stuck into David Tyrrell, who's an aging player, but they've just got to really make sure that their edge defence is adequate, because we've seen Angus Crichton absolutely carve teams up at times. And if I'm Maguire, I'm trying to get Walker probably involved in some sort of plays with Crichton a little bit more. He shows up a lot on that left edge, but not so much on the right edge where Crichton's so damaging. So I think if you can draw a player of Cody Walker's influence into the game and just create that little shadow of doubt of, who are they going here? And even if they just sort of bide their time for that one crucial play where they do go out to the back to Walker or something like that, I think they can really have some really good rewards. So yeah, look, that's a few of the pluses and minuses that each side possesses. But for me, I think it's a case of a bit of a reality check for Penrith of where they are and where perhaps they thought the game was going to be won against the Cowboys, but at the same time, it's up to the Rabbitohs to come out with new energy, coming off the back of a bye, and really try and put on a performance for their home fans. Otherwise, they're pretty well done for the season. Whereas Penrith, they really need to be making that charge and continuing to build that momentum coming into the back end and their influence on a final series for 2017. So yeah, that's us, guys. Everything preview for round 17. Good luck with all your tips. I hope your team performs adequately. And I shall see you at the start of next week, where we'll break everything down and see what I was right about, see what I was wrong about, and have a good weekend and enjoy your footy, guys. Catch you later.